The stars seemed to flicker and dim as the massive vessels slid into Earth's orbit, their hulls gleaming like obsidian against the velvet backdrop of space. The planet below, a swirling marble of blue and white, continued its peaceful rotation, blissfully unaware that its fate hung in the balance. Or so thought the invaders. High Lord Xlorgon Farthub stood at the panoramic viewport of the Xlorgon flagship, the inevitable dominance, his seven-fingered hands clasped behind his back. His skin, the color of burnished copper with a faint, luminescent quality, caught the reflected light of Earth's sun. The ceremonial headdress perched atop his elongated skull, an elaborate construction resembling a fusion of exotic fruits, precious metals, and what humans might describe as traffic control equipment, swayed slightly with each breath. 67 conquest campaigns had earned him the right to wear this ridiculous yet revered symbol of authority, and today would mark his 68th victory. "High Lord," came the deferential voice of First Commander Kriltak from behind him. "All vessels report ready for the subjugation announcement. The broadcast systems are calibrated to penetrate all Earth communication networks." Farthub didn't turn. His four eyes, two large primary ones and two smaller secondary ones, positioned above, remained fixed on the planet. "Tell me, Kriltak," he said, his voice a resonant rumble that seemed to originate from somewhere deeper than his visible anatomy would suggest. "What do you know of these humans?" Kriltak consulted his data tablet, the screen casting a pale glow on his features, similar to Farthub's but lacking the distinguished crests that marked the High Lord's noble lineage. "Primitive bipeds, my lord. Technology level, moderate. Military capability, negligible compared to our armada. Notable characteristics, unusually high water content and a peculiar obsession with recording themselves performing trivial activities." A small smile played at the corners of Farthub's lipless mouth. "And yet, they've survived this long. Curious, isn't it? The universe is not kind to fragile species." "Perhaps they've simply been fortunate, my lord. Their star system is relatively isolated." Farthub made a dismissive gesture with one hand, the ceremonial rings on his fingers clinking softly. "Fortune is the excuse of the unobservant, Kriltak. Remember that." He turned, finally, his headdress wobbling precariously. "Begin the broadcast. Let us introduce ourselves to our new subjects." As Farthub moved toward the central platform of the command deck, crew members scurried to their positions. The Xlorgon Empire had conquered 17 galaxies through a combination of overwhelming military force and psychological intimidation. The initial broadcast was a crucial part of their strategy, designed to instill such terror that many civilizations surrendered without firing a single shot. The platform rose slightly as Farthub stepped onto it, and a circle of light engulfed him. He adjusted his ceremonial headdress, which had begun to list dangerously to one side. The absurd contraction was the bane of his existence, but tradition demanded he wear it for all official conquests. It had been designed millennia ago when the Xlorgon were considerably taller and had stronger neck muscles. Evolution had not been kind to their ceremonial fashion sense. "Broadcast commencing in 3, 2, 1, announced the communications officer. Farthub drew himself up to his full height of nearly 7 feet, his chest expanding as he prepared to deliver the speech he had given 67 times before. The words were etched into his memory like the ancient carvings on the Temple of Subjugation, back on the Xlorgon homeworld. "Humans," he intoned, his voice processed and amplified to reach every corner of the planet below. "You are now subjects of the glorious Xlorgon Empire. Your planet, which you call Earth, a disappointingly unimaginative name, is hereby claimed as a protectorate under the Galactic Code of Conquest, Section 7, Paragraph 12R, YA. Resistance is not only futile but frankly embarrassing for all parties involved. Surrender your world immediately, and we shall make your subjugation as painless as possible. You will be assigned roles as custodians of the—" A soft, almost apologetic chime interrupted his well-rehearsed speech. Farthub blinked all 4 eyes in sequence, a sign of irritation among his species. He glanced at the communication console where a message flashed. "Incoming transmission from Earth." The High Lord's secondary eyes narrowed. This was unusual. Most species were too paralyzed with fear to respond so quickly. "They're interrupting my conquest speech," he muttered to Kriltak. "Is there no respect for protocol in this galaxy anymore?" Kriltak looked uncomfortable. "Shall I ignore the transmission, my lord?" Farthub considered this for a moment, then sighed. "No, perhaps they're calling to surrender immediately. That would be refreshingly efficient. Accept the transmission." With a gesture from Kriltak, the main view screen shifted from its display of Earth to show the face of a human male. The creature appeared remarkably composed, wearing what Farthub's cultural database identified as formal attire, though it seemed to hang on the human's frame as if it had been borrowed from someone slightly larger. His hair was disheveled in a way that suggested he had either recently awakened or had been running his hands through it anxiously. "Aha, hello there," the human exclaimed with unexpected cheerfulness. "I'm Jeffrey Thornwood, Assistant Deputy to the Associate Director of Extraterrestrial Communications. Terribly sorry to interrupt what sounded like a very impressive speech. On behalf of Earth, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and your rather magnificent fleet." Farthub's mouth opened slightly, then closed. This was not the reaction he had anticipated. He glanced at Kriltak, who appeared equally perplexed. "Warm welcome," Farthub repeated slowly, as if the words were in a language he was still learning. "You do understand we're here to, well, conquer you? To subjugate your species and claim your resources for the glory of the Xlorgon Empire?" "Oh yes, absolutely," Jeffrey nodded enthusiastically, his smile never faltering. "We received your advance notice about 3 weeks ago when your fleet entered our solar system. Very considerate of you to give us a heads up, by the way. Most would-be conquerors just show up unannounced." Farthub's brow furrowed. "We sent no advance notice." Jeffrey waved a hand dismissively. "Well, your engine signatures did. Our deep space monitoring systems picked them up. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, we're quite familiar with the whole surrender or be destroyed routine. It happens more often than you might think." A murmur ran through the command deck. Farthub felt a creeping unease. This was not how conquest was supposed to proceed. The script had been the same for thousands of years. Arrive, threaten, watch the panic, accept surrender, begin resource extraction. This human's casual demeanor was throwing everything off balance. "I see," said Farthub, trying to regain control of the situation. "Then you understand the futility of resistance. Your surrender is—" "Before we get to all that," Jeffrey interrupted, shuffling some papers on what appeared to be a desk just out of view, "we do have a small formality to attend to. A bit of bureaucratic red tape, if you will." Farthub's tentacles, which extended from his shoulders as secondary appendages, twitched in irritation. "Formality?" "Yes, just a teensy administrative matter," Jeffrey said, producing a clipboard. "We call it the determination test." "The what?" Farthub asked, his voice losing some of its authoritative resonance. "Well, you see," Jeffrey began, adjusting his tie, "Earth has had quite a number of visitors over the centuries, would-be conquerors, if you will, and to be perfectly frank, most of them didn't seem particularly committed to the whole conquest business. They'd arrive with great fanfare, make grand threats, and then, at the first sign of difficulty, they'd dash off without so much as a proper goodbye. Terribly rude and a waste of everyone's time, really." Farthub felt his headdress slipping again and reached up to adjust it. "Are you suggesting that other species have attempted to conquer Earth before us?" "Oh my, yes," Jeffrey chuckled. "Dozens, at least. There was a particularly memorable group about 3 centuries ago, called themselves the Dominion of Eternal Night or something equally dramatic. Showed up with a fleet twice the size of yours, actually, made quite similar speeches about subjugation and inevitable doom." "And what happened to them?" Farthub asked, a note of concern creeping into his voice. Jeffrey's expression turned thoughtful. "Well, that's why we developed the determination test, to separate the genuinely committed conquerors from the, shall we say, cosmic tourists. The Dominion failed rather spectacularly, I'm afraid. Their flagship is now part of an underwater museum in the Pacific Ocean, quite popular with school groups." The command deck had fallen completely silent. Even the usual background hum of the ship's system seemed muted, as if the vessel itself was listening intently. "And what exactly," Farthub asked slowly, "does this test involve?" "Oh, it's really quite straightforward," Jeffrey replied, tapping his clipboard with a pen. "We launch a modest defensive response at your fleet and observe how you handle it. It helps us determine if you're serious about this whole conquest business or if you're just passing through and making a lot of noise. In fact," he glanced at something off-screen, "the first phase should be reaching you right about now." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the flagship. The tactical display erupted with countless red dots, all converging on the Xlorgon Fleet from the planet below. "High Lord," the tactical officer shouted over the sudden chaos. Earth has launched what appears to be millions of projectiles toward our position. Farthub stared at the display in disbelief. Millions? That's impossible. Our intelligence indicated they had limited orbital defense capabilities. If you survive this initial assessment, Jeffrey continued calmly, as if discussing the weather, we'll be more than happy to proceed with negotiations regarding your proposed dominion over us. If not, well, we'll simply assume you weren't that serious about conquering us in the first place. No hard feelings either way. The screen went blank just as the first wave of missiles reached the outer perimeter of the fleet. The inevitable dominance shuddered violently as its shields absorbed multiple impacts. Farthub's ceremonial headdress finally lost its battle with gravity and toppled from his head, landing on the deck with a hollow, anticlimactic thud. "Damage report," Farthub demanded, gripping the command rail as another series of impacts rocked the ship. "Chills at 82% and falling, High Lord," reported the tactical officer, her fingers dancing across her console. "The outer vessels are reporting multiple direct hits. The resplendent Doom and the inevitable Annihilator are taking the brunt of the attack." As if summoned by the mention of their names, the communication system crackled to life. "High Lord," came a voice distorted by static and what sounded suspiciously like panic. "This is Captain Drelnar of the Resplendent Doom. We've lost half our ship and nearly a third of our crew. The humans' weapons they're unlike anything in our database. What are your orders?" Before Farthub could respond, another voice broke through. "This is Commander Vexus of the Inevitable Annihilator. Our shields have failed, propulsion systems are offline, and we've lost contact with 200 crew members. Should we implement Emergency Protocol Zeta 9? Farthub frowned. "What's Emergency Protocol Zeta 9? There was an awkward pause. "It's where we teleport to the surface, find a secure location, and assume the fetal position while weeping uncontrollably, sir." "What? When was that added to our tactical protocols?" "After the Nebula 7 incident, my lord. You signed off on it yourself." Farthub made a mental note to fire his administrative assistant if they survived this encounter. "Absolutely not. Maintain position and—" Another voice cut through. "High Lord, the Perpetual Menace is experiencing catastrophic—" The transmission ended abruptly with a sound that managed to convey both explosion and implosion simultaneously. The tactical display updated, showing the Perpetual Menace, once a proud destroyer capable of laying waste to entire continents, now reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Farthub watched in horror as more of his fleet began to blink out of existence, one ship after another. "High Lord," Krilchak said quietly beside him, "perhaps we should consider a strategic repositioning." "You mean retreat?" Farthub replied flatly. "I would never use such terminology, my lord, merely suggesting a temporary withdrawal to reassess our approach." The view screen flickered back to life, showing Jeffrey once more. This time, he was holding what appeared to be a steaming beverage in a container emblazoned with the logo of a global coffee dispensary chain. "Just checking in," he said pleasantly. "How are you finding our little test so far? Are you planning to continue with the invasion, or should we consider this more of a preliminary visit?" Farthub stared at the human, then at the tactical display showing the systematic destruction of his once mighty armada. Half his fleet was now nothing more than glowing debris, and the remainder weren't faring much better. "We may need to reconsider our approach," he admitted, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "Perfectly understandable," Jeffrey replied, with what seemed like genuine sympathy. "First attempts rarely go smoothly. I'll go ahead and cancel the next wave of our defensive response then. You take all the time you need to regroup." The transmission ended, leaving Farthub staring at the blank screen. The alarms continued to wail, though with less urgency now that the immediate barrage had ceased. "Orders, High Lord?" Kriltak prompted gently. Farthub slumped into his command chair, his gaze fixed on his ceremonial headdress lying pathetically on the deck. 67 successful conquests, and now this. The humiliation would follow him back to the homeworld, assuming they made it that far. With a heavy sigh that seemed to deflate his entire being, he uttered the word that had never before passed his lips. Retreat. As the remnants of the once mighty Xlorgon Fleet limped away from Earth, Farthub couldn't shake the image of Jeffrey's calm, almost sympathetic expression. Something told him that the humans had been through this routine many times before, and that perhaps, just perhaps, the Xlorgon Empire had finally met its match in this unassuming blue planet and its surprisingly prepared inhabitants. Back on Earth, in a nondescript government building, Jeffrey Thornwood placed his coffee mug on his desk and made a small tick on his clipboard next to Xlorgon Empire. Then he glanced at his calendar, noting that another would-be invasion fleet was scheduled to arrive next Tuesday. "I should really order more coffee," he muttered to himself as he reached for the phone. The inevitable dominance lurched away from Earth's orbit, its once pristine hull now scarred with impact craters and trailing wisps of vaporized metal. Inside the flagship's medical bay, chaos reigned, as medical officers tended to the wounded. The acrid smell of burned circuitry mingled with the distinctive copper-sweet scent of Xlorgon blood. High Lord Farthub sat motionless on an examination table, ignoring the medical officer who was attempting to treat a gash above his secondary eyes. His mind replayed the humiliation over and over, the casual dismissal by that human, Jeffrey, the devastating effectiveness of Earth's defenses, and worst of all, the order to retreat that he himself had given. "My lord," the medical officer said hesitantly, "I need to apply the regenerative gel to prevent scarring." Farthub waved him away with a dismissive flick of his tentacle. "Let it scar," he growled. "A reminder of this miscalculation." First Commander Kriltak approached, his uniform singed and his normally immaculate posture slightly stooped from exhaustion. "High Lord, we've compiled the preliminary damage reports. Would you prefer to review them now, or—" "How many?" Farthub interrupted, his voice hollow. Kriltak hesitated. "My lord? How many ships lost? How many of our people dead because of my arrogance?" Kriltak's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of discomfort. "We lost 23 vessels completely. 17 more are severely damaged but salvageable. Casualty reports are still coming in, but current estimates suggest around 12,000 dead, twice that injured." Farthub closed his primary eyes, leaving only his secondary pair open, a sign of deep mourning in Xlorgon culture. 12,000. 12,000 lives lost because I underestimated a species that drinks stimulant beverages while repelling invasions. "The humans were unexpectedly prepared," Kriltak offered diplomatically. "Our intelligence was clearly flawed." "No," Farthub said, opening his primary eyes again. "Our intelligence was incomplete, but the true failure was mine. I was overconfident. 67 successful conquests made me believe the 68th would be no different." He slid off the examination table, ignoring the medical officer's protests. "Where is my ceremonial headdress?" Kriltak looked uncomfortable. "It was damaged during the attack, my lord. The artisans are attempting to repair it, but—" "Leave it broken," Farthub said firmly. "Another reminder." As they made their way through the corridors of the damaged flagship, crew members stopped and saluted, their expressions a mixture of respect and uncertainty. The Xlorgon Empire had not suffered a defeat of this magnitude in living memory. No one quite knew the proper protocol. They arrived at the ship's strategic planning chamber, where the remaining ship captains and commanders had gathered. The room fell silent as Farthub entered. He noted the empty chairs, each representing a lost vessel and its captain, and felt the weight of those absences like physical pressure on his chest. "My fellow warriors," he began, his voice stronger than he felt. "Today we have experienced something few in our empire have known: defeat. The humans have proven themselves to be far more formidable than our intelligence suggested." Captain Drelnar of the Resplendent Doom, his face partially covered with regenerative bandages, spoke up. "High Lord, with respect, was that truly a defeat? We withdrew strategically. We could return with reinforcements, perhaps the Grand Armada itself." "And what makes you think the outcome would be different?" Farthub asked quietly. "Did you not hear what the humans said? They've repelled invasions before, some with fleets larger than ours." "No, Captain, we were defeated today, and we must acknowledge that truth if we are to learn from it." An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. For a species that had known only victory for generations, defeat was an alien concept, almost incomprehensible. "What are your orders, High Lord?" Commander Vexus asked finally. Farthub moved to the central holographic display and activated it, showing their current position relative to Earth. "We will withdraw to the outer reaches of this solar system to make repairs. I want all damaged vessels stabilized within 48 hours. Meanwhile, I want every piece of information we have on Earth and its inhabitants analyzed again, this time without our preconceptions." "And then?" Kriltak prompted. Farthub's expression hardened. Then we learn, we adapt, and perhaps we reconsider what conquest truly means. Back on Earth, Jeffrey Thornwood stepped out of the nondescript government building into the crisp evening air. The sky above was clear, showing no sign of the space battle that had occurred hours earlier. To the casual observer, it was just another ordinary day. He loosened his tie as he walked toward the parking lot, where a woman leaned against a sleek electric vehicle. Dr. Amara Nakamura, Director of Extraterrestrial Defense Strategy, looked up from her tablet as he approached. "Another one bites the dust?" she asked, her tone light despite the gravity of what had transpired. Jeffrey nodded, fatigue finally showing on his features now that he was away from alien eyes. The Xlorgon supposedly conquered 67 planets before trying Earth. They didn't even make it past Phase 1 of the determination test. Amara shook her head. "That's what, the 4th attempt this year? They're coming more frequently." "5th, actually. You were in Geneva for the Kral incursion last month. Small fleet, big talk. Lasted about 20 minutes. They got into the vehicle, which hummed to life silently. As Amara navigated through evening traffic, Jeffrey stared out the window at the city lights, at the people going about their lives, blissfully unaware of how close they had come to yet another alien invasion. "Sometimes I wonder if we should tell them," he said quietly. Amara glanced at him. "Tell who what?" "The public, about all of this, about how many times Earth has nearly been conquered, about the defense systems we've built using reverse-engineered alien tech, about the fact that we're apparently the most stubbornly unconquerable planet in this sector of the galaxy." Amara's laugh was soft but tinged with weariness. "Can you imagine the panic? Besides, the disclosure protocol is clear. The public gets to know when we establish peaceful contact, not when we're shooting down would-be conquerors." "I suppose," Jeffrey conceded. "It's just strange, living this double life. Assistant Deputy to the Associate Director of Extraterrestrial Communications by day, Earth's first line of diplomatic defense by also day, I guess, depending on when they show up." They pulled up to a modest apartment building. Neither made a move to exit the vehicle immediately. "Do you ever wonder why they keep coming?" Amara asked, staring through the windshield at nothing in particular. "What is it about Earth that makes us such a target?" Jeffrey considered this. According to the archival records, it's a combination of factors: our water resources, our biodiversity, our strategic position in the galaxy. But mostly I think it's because we look like an easy target. Small planet, seemingly limited technology, no obvious unified planetary defense system. "The perfect trap," Amara said with a small smile. "Look vulnerable, be invincible." "Not invincible," Jeffrey corrected, "just prepared, thanks to the first contact." They both fell silent, thinking of the event that had changed Earth's destiny a century ago, when the first alien visitors had come not as conquerors but as refugees, warning of the dangers that lurked among the stars and helping humanity prepare for what would inevitably come. "I should go," Amara said finally. "Early meeting tomorrow with the Lunar Defense Committee. They want to expand the Phase 3 response capabilities." "Probably wise, considering how many visitors we've been getting," Jeffrey agreed. "I'll see you tomorrow. I need to prepare a full report on the excursion encounter." As Amara drove away, Jeffrey stood for a moment, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, a defeated alien armada was licking its wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. He wondered if they would return, and if so, whether they would come as enemies or, perhaps, as something else. 3 days later, in the outer reaches of the solar system, High Lord Farthub stood before a wall-sized viewing screen in his private quarters. The image showed Earth, peaceful and blue, rotating slowly against the blackness of space. He had been staring at it for hours, trying to understand what had happened, trying to see what he had missed. A chime announced a visitor. "Enter," he called, not turning from the screen. Priltak stepped in, carrying a data tablet. "The repairs are proceeding ahead of schedule, High Lord. The resplendent doom will be spaceworthy again within 12 hours. "Good," Farthub said absently, still staring at the image of Earth. Priltak hesitated, then asked, "Have you made a decision about our next course of action, my lord? The captains are eager for direction." Farthub finally turned from the screen. "I have been reviewing our historical records, Priltak. Do you know how many species the Excopid Empire has encountered in its expansion?" 112 major civilizations, my lord, according to the Imperial Archives. And of those, how many did we conquer through direct military action? Creeltak blinked, confused by the question. All of them, my lord. That is the Xlorgon way. No, Farthub said quietly. That is what the official histories tell us. But I've been reading the original mission logs, not the sanitized versions taught in our academies. Of those 112 civilizations, 23 joined our empire voluntarily, seeking protection from greater threats. 15 more became trading partners first, then political allies, and only later formal subjects. The truth, Creeltak, is that less than half of our empire was built through conquest alone. Creeltak looked troubled. My lord, such revisionist thinking borders on what? Heresy? Treason? Farthub's secondary eyes narrowed. Or perhaps on wisdom. The first emperor himself wrote that true conquest begins with understanding. We failed to understand Earth, and we paid the price. He turned back to the screen, to the image of the planet that had humbled him. I've also been analyzing the humans' words more carefully. This Jeffrey Thornwood. He said they've repelled numerous invasion attempts, yet Earth shows no signs of being a militaristic society. Their global communications networks are filled with entertainment, commerce, art, not propaganda or military indoctrination. What are you suggesting, High Lord? Farthub's expression softened into something rarely seen on a Xlorgon face, curiosity without conquest. I'm suggesting that perhaps there is more than one way to add a planet to our empire. Perhaps the humans have something to teach us. Creeltak looked alarmed. You're not considering diplomacy? I'm considering survival, Farthub replied firmly. Ours and theirs. Prepare a small shuttle. I will return to Earth. Alone. My lords, that's far too dangerous. The humans could have destroyed our entire fleet, yet they stopped when we retreated. That suggests restraint, perhaps even mercy. Concepts our empire has forgotten in its relentless expansion. Farthub's tentacles curled with determination. Sometimes, Creeltak, the greatest conquest is the one that happens without a single shot fired. Jeffrey was in the middle of explaining the finer points of Earth's weather patterns to a bemused representative from the Galactic Council when his secure communication device buzzed. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway of the International Extraterrestrial Relations Facility, a structure that officially didn't exist according to public records. Thornwood, he answered. Sir, we've detected a small craft approaching Earth orbit, came the urgent voice of Lieutenant Mayor Rodriguez from the orbital monitoring station. It appears to be Xlorgon, in origin. Jeffrey frowned. Just one craft? No fleet signature. Confirmed, sir. Single shuttle-class vessel. It's broadcasting on all frequencies, requesting direct communication with you specifically. With me? Jeffrey's eyebrows rose in surprise. That's unusual. What's the message? Just repeating your name and title, sir, and requesting permission to approach. No threats, no demands. Jeffrey considered this for a moment. Maintain defensive posture, but don't engage. Direct them to landing zone Echo. I'll meet them there. And, Lieutenant, let's keep this quiet for now. No need to alarm the Defense Committee until we know what this is about. Understood, sir. Jeffrey ended the call and leaned against the wall, his mind racing. In all his years handling extraterrestrial encounters, he'd never had a defeated would-be conqueror return so quickly, and alone. This was either a trap or something entirely new. He straightened his tie and returned to the meeting room. I apologize, Ambassador Zixtal, but I'm afraid I need to cut our discussion short. An urgent matter requires my attention. The Galactic Council representative, a being composed primarily of crystalline structures that refracted light in hypnotic patterns, shifted in what Jeffrey had learned to recognize as understanding. Time flows differently for all beings, Jeffrey Thornwood. Our discussion of precipitation can continue when the currents of duty release you. Thank you for your understanding, Jeffrey said with a small bow. Dr. Nakamura will ensure you have everything you need in my absence. As he hurried toward the facility's transport bay, Jeffrey sent a quick message to Amara. Xlorgon returning, single shuttle, meeting at Echo, backup appreciated but discreet. Her reply came almost instantly. On my way. Armed. He considered this. Standard protocol, but something feels different about this one. Landing Zone Echo was a remote facility in the Nevada desert, designed specifically for potentially hostile extraterrestrial visitors. From the air, it appeared to be nothing more than an abandoned airfield. Underground, however, it housed some of Earth's most advanced defensive systems. all currently locked onto the small Xlorgon shuttle as it made its final approach. Jeffrey stood on the landing pad, flanked by 4 security officers in unmarked tactical gear. The desert wind whipped at his suit jacket as the alien craft descended, kicking up swirls of dust. Despite the circumstances, he maintained his characteristic calm demeanor, though his hand rested near the concealed sidearm beneath his jacket, a weapon developed using technology from 3 different alien civilizations. The shuttle touched down with surprising gentleness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a hatch opened, and a ramp extended to the ground. A single figure emerged, tall, copper-skinned, with the distinctive tentacular appendages of the Xlorgon species. Jeffrey immediately recognized High Lord Farthub, though something was noticeably different. "He's not wearing the ridiculous hat," Amara's voice came through Jeffrey's earpiece. She was watching from a secure observation post nearby. Indeed, Farthub's head was bare, the absurd ceremonial headdress nowhere to be seen. As he descended the ramp, Jeffrey also noted that he wore simpler attire than during their first encounter, functional rather than ceremonial. Farthub stopped a respectful distance away and, to Jeffrey's surprise, inclined his head in what appeared to be a bow. "Jeffrey Thornwood of Earth," he said, his voice lacking the bombastic quality it had possessed during the invasion attempt. "I come alone and unarmed, seeking conversation rather than conquest." Jeffrey maintained his professional smile. "High Lord Farthub, this is an unexpected pleasure. Most visitors wait a bit longer before returning after failing the determination test." If the Xlorgon was offended by the reminder of his defeat, he didn't show it. Most visitors, I suspect, do not recognize the opportunity that such a failure presents. "And what opportunity would that be?" Jeffrey asked, genuinely curious now. Farthub gestured to the barren landscape around them. "Might we speak somewhere more comfortable? The atmospheric composition of your planet is within my tolerance range, but your star is rather intense on exposed skin." Jeffrey considered this request. Protocol dictated that first meetings with potentially hostile species take place in controlled environments. But this wasn't a first meeting, and Farthub's demeanor suggested this was indeed something different. "I think we can arrange that," Jeffrey said finally. "Please understand that security precautions will be necessary." "I would expect nothing less from a civilization capable of defeating the Xlorgon Armada," Farthub replied with what might have been a hint of admiration. As they walked toward a nearby structure, Jeffrey heard Amara's voice again in his earpiece. "I don't like this, it feels too easy." "Sometimes," Jeffrey murmured quietly enough that only his microphone would pick it up, "the most difficult thing to accept is that things might be exactly what they appear to be." Inside the facility, they were led to a meeting room designed to accommodate various extraterrestrial physiologies. The furniture was modular, the lighting adjustable, and the air composition could be modified if necessary. Jeffrey gestured to a seating arrangement that would accommodate Farthub's tentacular appendages. "Our intelligence suggests your species prefers elevated seating positions," Jeffrey explained. "Is this suitable?" Farthub seemed momentarily taken aback by the consideration. "Yes, quite suitable. Your knowledge of Xlorgon preferences is unexpected." "We make it our business to understand those who visit us," Jeffrey replied, taking a seat across from the alien, "especially those who arrive with conquest in mind." 2 security officers positioned themselves discreetly by the door, while surveillance systems monitored every aspect of the encounter, from Farthub's vital signs to the microscopic particles in his exhalations. "So," Jeffrey began, folding his hands on the table, "you mentioned an opportunity. I'm curious what opportunity you believe arose from your fleet's strategic repositioning." Farthub's secondary eyes narrowed slightly at the euphemism, but he nodded. "In 67 conquests, no civilization has ever repelled a Xlorgon invasion. Not one. Yet Earth did so with apparent ease. This suggests one of 2 possibilities. Either your species possesses military technology far beyond our understanding, or you have knowledge we lack. Perhaps both." "An interesting assessment," Jeffrey replied neutrally. "And this represents an opportunity how, exactly?" "The Xlorgon Empire has expanded for millennia through conquest," Farthub explained, his tentacles moving in subtle patterns that the translation software identified as indicating sincerity. "It is our tradition, our way, but traditions that cannot adapt eventually lead to extinction." He leaned forward slightly. "I have come to propose something unprecedented in our history. A mutual exchange. Knowledge for knowledge. technology for technology, culture for culture, not as conqueror and conquered, but as potential allies. Jeffrey's carefully maintained expression flickered briefly with genuine surprise. In his earpiece, he heard Amara whisper, "Is he serious?" "That is not what I expected to hear," Jeffrey admitted. "Most species that fail to conquer us either retreat permanently or return with larger forces." "I am not most species," Farthub said with what might have been pride. "And the Xlorgon, for all our flaws, are not fools. We recognize superior capability when we encounter it. The question is not whether Earth could be valuable to the Xlorgon Empire. Clearly it could, but whether the traditional method of acquisition is appropriate in this case." Jeffrey studied the alien carefully. "And what would this mutual exchange entail, practically speaking?" "To begin, diplomatic relations, cultural exchanges, perhaps trade in non-military technologies. Over time, as trust develops, more substantial cooperation." Farthub's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that the translation software identified as indicating openness. "The Xlorgon Empire spans 17 galaxies, Jeffrey Thornwood. We have encountered wonders and terrors you cannot imagine, and yet, in all our expansion, we have never met a species quite like human." "I'm curious," Jeffrey said, leaning back slightly. "What makes humans so distinctive in your view? We're not particularly advanced by galactic standards. We haven't even colonized our own solar system effectively yet." Farthub made a sound that the translation software struggled to interpret, something between amusement and respect. "You repelled an invasion force capable of subjugating entire star systems, and you did it while drinking a beverage and consulting a clipboard. If that is not distinctive, I do not know what is." Despite himself, Jeffrey smiled. "Fair point, but I should clarify something. Earth's defenses weren't developed in isolation. We've had previous visitors. Some came as conquerors like you, others came with different intentions." "The ones who helped you prepare," Farthub nodded. "Yes, I suspected as much. No species develops planetary defense systems of your caliber without external influence or dire necessity, perhaps both in your case." Jeffrey was impressed by the alien's perceptiveness. "You've given this considerable thought." "I've had little else to do while overseeing repairs to my fleet," Farthub admitted. "That, and reconsidering everything I thought I knew about galactic conquest." In Jeffrey's ear, Amara's voice came through again. "The biometric readings suggest he's being truthful, Jeff. No signs of deception we can detect." Jeffrey nodded slightly, acknowledging her input without making it obvious to Farthub. "Let's say hypothetically that Earth was interested in this mutual exchange. What would be the first step?" "A gesture of good faith," Farthub replied promptly. "From both sides. I propose this. I will provide you with detailed information on 3 systems in the Xlorgon Empire that pose potential threats to Earth, species that might view your planet as we did, as a target for conquest. In exchange, I ask for information on how you detected our approach so far in advance of our arrival." Jeffrey considered this. The offer was tempting. Advanced knowledge of potential threats was always valuable, and the information Farthub requested wasn't particularly sensitive. Several allied species already knew about Earth's deep space monitoring network. "I would need to consult with my superiors," Jeffrey said carefully. "As I'm sure you understand, decisions of this magnitude aren't made unilaterally." "Of course," Farthub agreed. "The same is true in the Empire. My proposal will face resistance from traditionalists, but change often does." Jeffrey stood. "I'll arrange for suitable accommodations while you wait. Our facility is equipped for various physiological needs." "Thank you," Farthub said, rising as well. "I appreciate your consideration and, if I may," he hesitated, then continued, "I would be interested in learning more about your planet while I'm here, your cultures, your history, if that would be permitted." Jeffrey found himself warming to the alien's apparent sincerity. "I think that could be arranged. We have extensive educational materials designed for extraterrestrial visitors." As Farthub was escorted to guest quarters, Jeffrey remained in the meeting room, deep in thought. After a few minutes, the door opened and Amara entered, her expression a mixture of caution and intrigue. "Well, that was unexpected," she said, taking the seat Farthub had vacated. "A Lithogon diplomat instead of a conqueror. The Defense Committee is going to have a field day with this." "If he's sincere," Jeffrey mused. This could represent a significant shift in our extraterrestrial relations. The Xlorgon Empire is one of the largest political entities in the known galaxy. Having them as allies rather than enemies would be advantageous? That's a big if, Amara pointed out. This could be an elaborate ruse to gain intelligence on our defenses. Jeffrey nodded. Possible, but unlikely. He could have gathered more intelligence by simply observing from a distance than by placing himself in our custody. No, I think he's genuine, or at least genuinely curious. So what now? Now, Jeffrey said, straightening his tie. I have to convince the Defense Committee that the alien who tried to conquer us 3 days ago should be treated as a potential ally. He smiled wryly. Just another day at the office. The Defense Committee meeting was predictably contentious. Held in a secure underground chamber beneath Geneva, it brought together representatives from Earth's major powers and several trusted extraterrestrial advisors who had long ago made Earth their home. This is preposterous, General Helena Vasquez declared, slamming her hand on the polished table. The Xlorgon attacked us. Their fleet would have enslaved humanity if our defenses hadn't held, and now we're considering diplomatic relations? Not considering, corrected Director Omar Corey of the Global Intelligence Network, merely entertaining the possibility of considering. There's a difference. Jeffrey stood at the presentation podium, maintaining his characteristic calm despite the heated debate. I understand the concerns, truly I do, but I would remind the committee that Earth's current position in interstellar affairs is built on precisely this kind of flexibility. When the Arcturian Collective first approached us with warnings about galactic threats, many voiced similar objections to cooperation. The Arcturians never tried to conquer us first, Vasquez pointed out. No, but the Centauri did, Jeffrey countered. And now they're among our closest allies. Their defensive technology forms the backbone of our planetary shield network. Dr. Zivra, an Arcturian scientist who had lived on Earth for over 50 years, raised a slender, blue-tinged hand. When she spoke, her voice had the musical quality characteristic of her species. If I may offer a perspective, the Xlorgon Empire is indeed known for its military conquests, but also for its administrative efficiency and technological innovation. An alliance, even a limited one, could provide Earth with access to knowledge that would otherwise take centuries to develop independently. General Vasquez looked unconvinced. And what did they get in return? Access to our defenses, the very systems that prevented their conquest. Cultural exchange, Jeffrey suggested. Scientific collaboration in non-military fields. Perhaps limited trade. Earth has unique resources that many species value. Our biodiversity alone represents a treasure trove of potential pharmaceutical compounds. The debate continued for hours, with arguments ranging from the practical to the philosophical. Eventually, Chairperson Lucia Ortega called for a preliminary vote. The committee authorizes Mr. Thornwood to continue exploratory discussions with the Xlorgon representative, she announced after tallying the results. However, no binding agreements are to be made without full committee approval, and all exchanges of information must be vetted through appropriate channels. Jeffrey nodded. Thank you, Chairperson. I'll proceed with caution. As the meeting adjourned, Amara joined him in the corridor outside. Congratulations! I thought Vasquez was going to have an aneurysm when the vote went against her. She's not wrong to be cautious, Jeffrey admitted. The Xlorgon have conquered 67 worlds. That's not a record that inspires immediate trust. But you believe Farthub is sincere? Jeffrey considered this as they walked toward the transport bay. I believe he's sincere about wanting something different than conquest. Whether that translates to genuine alliance or merely a more sophisticated form of acquisition remains to be seen. Well, Amara said with a small smile, if anyone can figure out an alien's true intentions, it's you. That's why they keep sending you to greet the would-be conquerors. That, and my impressive collection of ties, Jeffrey quipped, straightening the one he wore. Apparently, my fashion sense is considered diplomatically neutral across 17 species. Over the next several weeks, a cautious dance of diplomacy unfolded between Earth and the Xlorgon Empire. True to his word, Farthub provided detailed information on 3 potentially hostile civilizations in nearby sectors of the galaxy. Earth's intelligence analysts confirmed the information was accurate and valuable. One of the species mentioned had already been detected at the edges of Earth's deep space monitoring network. In return, Jeffrey was authorized to share limited information about Earth's early warning systems. enough to demonstrate good faith without compromising security. To his surprise, Farthub seemed genuinely impressed rather than calculating. "Remarkable," the Xlorgon said, as they walked through a secure garden facility designed for diplomatic interactions. The dome above them filtered the sunlight to comfortable levels for both species. "Your detection network extends nearly twice as far as our most advanced systems. The application of quantum entanglement for faster-than-light communication is particularly elegant." "We had good teachers," Jeffrey admitted. "The Arcturians shared the basic principles with us after the first contact." Father's tentacles rippled in what Jeffrey had learned to recognize as thoughtfulness. "The same Arcturians who now have representatives on your defense committee? Fascinating. In the Empire, we rarely allow non-Xlorgon input on matters of security." "Perhaps that's something to reconsider," Jeffrey suggested carefully. "Earth's strength comes partly from our diversity, not just among humans, but in our willingness to incorporate perspectives from other species." "A radical notion, by Xlorgon standards," Farthub acknowledged. "But then, I seem to be developing a taste for radical notions lately." As they continued their walk, Jeffrey noticed Farthub studying the various Earth plants with evident curiosity. "Your botanical diversity is extraordinary," the alien observed. "On Conquered," he caught himself. "On worlds that join the Empire, we typically implement standardized agricultural systems. Efficient, but lacking in variety." "Would you like to try something?" Jeffrey asked, stopping near a small tree bearing bright red fruits. Farthub's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Is it compatible with my physiology?" "According to our xenobiological analysis, yes. This is what we call an apple. It's quite popular among several visiting species." With evident caution, Farthub accepted the fruit Jeffrey plucked from the tree. Using his smaller, manipulative tentacles, he brought it to his mouth, a complex orifice that opened in a pattern reminiscent of a camera aperture. After a tentative taste, all 4 of his eyes widened simultaneously. "This is remarkable," he declared. "Sweet, yet complex. Nothing like our nutritional compounds." Jeffrey smiled. Sometimes the simplest exchanges are the most meaningful. As Farthub continued to savor the apple, Jeffrey reflected on how surreal this moment was, sharing fruit with an alien who, just weeks ago, had been intent on conquering Earth. Yet here they were, finding common ground in something as simple as food. "I've been thinking," Farthub said after finishing the apple, carefully placing the core in a disposal unit as Jeffrey had shown him, "about what you said regarding Earth's strength coming from diversity. The Xlorgon have always believed our strength came from uniformity, one empire, one approach, one vision. But perhaps there is wisdom in your way as well." "Different approaches for different circumstances," Jeffrey suggested. "Flexibility can be a form of strength." Farthub nodded slowly. "Indeed, which brings me to a proposal I've been formulating. What would Earth think of establishing a permanent diplomatic presence within the Xlorgon Empire? And allowing a similar presence here?" Jeffrey tried not to show his surprise. This was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. That would be a significant step. The Defense Committee would need to consider it carefully. "Of course," Farthub agreed, "as would the Imperial Council, but I believe it could be the beginning of something unprecedented. A relationship between Earth and the Xlorgon Empire based on mutual respect rather than dominance." As they continued their walk, Jeffrey found himself genuinely intrigued by the possibility. If successful, this could reshape interstellar politics in this sector of the galaxy. Earth, already a unique anomaly for its successful resistance to multiple invasion attempts, could become something even more remarkable, a bridge between conquering empires and independent worlds. "I'll present your proposal to the committee," Jeffrey promised, "though I should warn you, some members remain skeptical of your intentions." "As they should be," Farthub said with surprising candor. "Trust must be earned, especially between former adversaries. I am prepared for a long process." Jeffrey smiled. "In that case, would you like to try another Earth delicacy? We have something called ice cream that has proven universally popular among our extraterrestrial visitors." Farthub's tentacles rippled with what Jeffrey now recognized as enthusiasm. "I would be honored to expand my cultural understanding through this ice cream." As they headed toward the facility's culinary section, Jeffrey sent a quick message to Amara. "Progress continues. Farthub now proposing diplomatic exchange. Also, he's about to try chocolate ice cream. Betting pool on his reaction starts now." Her reply came swiftly. 20 credits, says he asks for seconds. Committee meeting tomorrow at 900 to discuss. Bring your persuasive tie. Jeffrey smiled to himself. The path from potential conquest to potential alliance was proving to be an interesting journey indeed. One measured not just in diplomatic agreements, but in shared apples and ice cream, in cultural exchanges and growing understanding. Perhaps this was how true peace was built in the galaxy, not through force of arms, but through the patient work of finding common ground, one conversation at a time. As he watched Farthub experience his first taste of chocolate ice cream, all four eyes widening in what could only be described as extraterrestrial delight, Jeffrey felt a sense of cautious optimism. The universe was vast and often dangerous, filled with species bent on conquest and domination, but sometimes, just sometimes, an unexpected encounter could lead to something better than conquest, something that might, in time, be called friendship. This, Farthub declared, raising his spoon in a gesture that seemed almost human, is far superior to conquest. Jeffrey couldn't help but laugh. Hi, Lord Farthub, I believe we may have found our common ground. And so, in a secure facility in the Nevada desert, over bowls of chocolate ice cream, the foundations were laid for what would eventually become one of the most significant diplomatic relationships in Earth's interstellar history. 6 months later, Jeffrey stood on the observation deck of the newly established Earth Embassy on Xlorgon Prime, the capital world of the vast empire. The sprawling metropolis below was a marvel of engineering, towering spires of iridescent metal reaching toward the crimson sky, gravity-defying transportation tubes connecting the various districts, and everywhere the distinctive copper-hued Xlorgon moving about their business. Quite a view, isn't it? Amara said, joining him at the viewport. As Earth's first ambassador to the Xlorgon Empire, she had spent the last 3 months establishing diplomatic protocols and building relationships with imperial officials. Hard to believe we were at war with them less than a year ago. Not quite war, Jeffrey corrected with a small smile. More of a misunderstanding. Amara laughed. A misunderstanding involving several million missiles and 12,000 Xlorgon casualties. But who's counting? Jeffrey's expression sobered. Farthub counts every day. It's why he's pushed so hard for this alliance, despite the resistance from the Imperial Council. The door to the observation deck slid open and Kriltak entered. As the official Xlorgon liaison to the Earth Embassy, he had been working closely with the human diplomatic team. His initial skepticism had gradually given way to a cautious respect. Ambassador Nakamura, Mr. Thornwood. He greeted them with the formal head tilt that had become standard in human Xlong interactions. Hi, Lord Farthub requests your presence at the Imperial Palace. The Council has reached a decision regarding the technology exchange proposal. Jeffrey and Amara exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been working toward, a formal agreement to share non-military technologies between Earth and the Xlorgon Empire. The negotiations had been delicate, with hardliners on both sides resistant to the idea of cooperation. Is there any indication which way they've decided? Amara asked, as they followed Kriltak to the embassy's transport bay. The High Lord did not share that information, Kriltak replied, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a gesture Jeffrey now knew indicated mild anxiety, but he seemed optimistic. The journey to the Imperial Palace took them through the heart of the capital. Jeffrey watched through the transport's windows as Xlorgon citizens stopped to stare at the passing diplomatic vehicle. Some made gestures that the cultural briefings had identified as respectful acknowledgement, while others displayed what appeared to be curiosity or even suspicion. Public opinion remains divided, Kriltak observed, noticing Jeffrey's attention to the onlookers. Many still view Earth as the only world to defeat a Xlorgon armada, a distinction that inspires both respect and resentment. Change takes time, Amara said diplomatically. On Earth, there are still those who believe we should have no contact with extraterrestrial civilizations at all, let alone former adversaries. Yet, here we are, Kriltak noted, pursuing alliance despite our differences. Perhaps that is progress in itself. The Imperial Palace loomed ahead, a massive structure that seemed to defy conventional architecture, with sections that appeared to float unsupported and surfaces that shifted colors as they approached. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at attention as the diplomatic transport landed on a designated platform. They were led through a series of increasingly ornate corridors, passing Xlorgon officials who regarded the human visitors with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Finally, they reached the council chamber, a vast circular room with a domed ceiling displaying what appeared to be a real-time map of the entire Xlorgon Empire, 17 galaxies rendered in glowing detail above their heads. High Lord Farthub stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by the 12 members of the Imperial Council. He wore formal attire, but notably, his head remained bare. He had not resumed wearing the ceremonial headdress since the failed invasion of Earth, a fact that had become the subject of much speculation in Xlorgon political circles. "Ambassador Nakamura, Jeffrey Thornwood," Farthub greeted them, his voice carrying the formal tone required for official proceedings. "The Imperial Council welcomes Earth's representatives." Amara stepped forward and performed the ceremonial response they had practiced extensively. "The people of Earth extend greetings to the Xlorgon Empire and express gratitude for this audience." One of the council members, an elderly Xlorgon with faded copper skin and tentacles that showed signs of regeneration, leaned forward. "Let us dispense with excessive formalities," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "We have deliberated on the proposed technology exchange, and we have reached a decision." Jeffrey felt tension building in his chest. Months of work, countless hours of negotiation, all coming down to this moment. "The Imperial Council," the elder continued, "by a vote of 7-5, approves the limited technology exchange program as outlined in the diplomatic proposal." Jeffrey exhaled slowly, careful not to show too much relief. Beside him, Amara maintained her professional composure, though he could sense her satisfaction. "Furthermore," the elder added, "the Council has authorized the establishment of a joint research facility in neutral space, where scientists from both our civilizations may work together on projects of mutual benefit." This was more than they had hoped for. The joint research facility had been mentioned as a possibility for the future, not an immediate concession. Farthub's secondary eyes narrowed slightly, a sign of pleased surprise that Jeffrey had learned to recognize. "The Council's wisdom is appreciated," he said formally. "This marks a historic moment in Xlorgon diplomatic history." "Indeed," the elder agreed, though his tone suggested he was not entirely comfortable with this assessment. "Though some would say it marks a departure from Xlorgon tradition." "Traditions evolve, Councillor Drexar," Farthub replied smoothly. "As must the Empire if it is to thrive in changing times." The elder Drexar made a gesture that the cultural briefings had not covered, but which seemed dismissive. "So you have argued, repeatedly. We shall see if this new approach bears fruit or folly." After the formal proceedings concluded, Farthub led Jeffrey and Amara to a private chamber adjacent to the council room. Once the doors sealed behind them, his formal demeanor relaxed visibly. "That," he said with evident satisfaction, "was closer than I would have liked, but a victory nonetheless." 7-5 is a solid majority, Amara observed, though clearly there remains significant opposition. "Councillor Drexar seemed particularly resistant," Jeffrey noted. "Is he likely to cause problems for the implementation?" Farthub's tentacles rippled in what Jeffrey now recognized as amusement. "Drexar has opposed every innovation in Imperial policy for the last century. His resistance is practically an endorsement." The Xlorgon moved to a viewport overlooking the capital. "But yes, there will be resistance. Change is never easy, especially for a civilization as old as ours." "It hasn't been entirely smooth on our end either," Amara admitted. "General Vasquez still insists this is an elaborate plot to gain access to Earth's defensive capabilities." "A reasonable concern," Farthub acknowledged. "In her position, I might harbor similar suspicions. Trust between former adversaries requires time and consistent demonstration of good faith." Jeffrey moved to join Farthub at the viewport. "Speaking of demonstrations of good faith, there's something we've been authorized to share with you," a gesture from Earth's leadership. Farthub's four eyes focused on Jeffrey with interest. "Oh, we've identified a Xlorgon colony world in the Cygnus sector that appears to be under observation by the Vexlori Collective, one of the hostile species you warned us about. Our deep space monitoring network detected their scout ships at the edge of that system." Farthub's posture stiffened. "The Vexlori? You're certain?" "Our analysts are confident," Amara confirmed. "We're sharing this intelligence as a demonstration of our commitment to mutual security." "This is significant," Farthub said, his voice grave. "That colony is primarily agricultural, with minimal defensive capabilities. If the Xlori are scouting it, he turned to face them fully. Thank you. This information may save many Xlorgon lives. That's the idea, Jeffrey said with a small smile. Allies look out for each other. Allies, Farthub repeated, as if testing the word. Yes, I suppose that is what we are becoming, isn't it? How remarkable. As they discussed the details of the Xlori sighting and potential responses, Jeffrey found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point, from invasion to alliance in less than a year, a transformation that would have seemed impossible that day when Farthub's fleet appeared in Earth's orbit, intent on conquest. Later, as they prepared to return to the Earth Embassy, Farthub escorted them personally to their transport. As Amara boarded, the High Lord held Jeffrey back for a moment. There is something I've been meaning to ask you, Farthub said, his voice lowered. Something that has puzzled me since our first encounter. What's that? Jeffrey asked. That day, when you appeared on our communications screen so calmly, with your clipboard and your coffee, did you know the missiles would be effective against our fleet? Were you certain of Earth's victory? Jeffrey considered the question carefully. No, he admitted finally. We had confidence in our defenses, but your fleet was unlike any we'd encountered before. There was significant uncertainty. Yet you appeared so assured, so untroubled. Jeffrey smiled. That's the job, High Lord. When you're representing your entire planet, you can't afford to show fear, even when you feel it. Farthub's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A valuable lesson in diplomacy. Perhaps there is much more we can learn from each other beyond technology. I believe there is, Jeffrey agreed, and I'm looking forward to it. As their transport lifted off from the Imperial Palace, Jeffrey watched Farthub's diminishing figure through the viewport. The Xlorgon stood tall, tentacles gently rippling in the crimson light of his world-setting sun, watching as the humans departed. You know, Amara said, following his gaze, when I took this assignment, I never imagined I'd end up feeling something close to friendship for the alien who tried to conquer our planet. The universe is full of surprises, Jeffrey replied. That's what makes this job interesting. Speaking of interesting, Amara said, checking her communication device, we've just received word from Earth. The Defense Committee has approved the next phase of cultural exchanges. Starting next month, we'll be hosting Xlorgon scholars at universities across Earth. Xlorgon studying human culture up close, Jeffrey mused. I wonder what they'll make of our music, our art, our literature. Probably about the same thing they made of our ice cream, Amara laughed. Initial confusion followed by enthusiastic appreciation. As their transport merged into the flowing traffic of the Xlorgon capital, Jeffrey found himself filled with a sense of possibility. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of Xlorgon expansionism wouldn't change overnight, and Earth's caution wouldn't disappear with a single treaty. But they had taken the first steps towards something unprecedented, a relationship between former enemies based on mutual respect and shared interests. And perhaps, in time, that relationship might become a model for others in the galaxy. Proof that even the most inauspicious beginnings could lead to meaningful alliance. That even a species bent on conquest could learn to value cooperation over subjugation. It had all started with a failed invasion, an interrupted speech, and a remarkably calm human with a clipboard and a cup of coffee. The universe, Jeffrey reflected, worked in mysterious ways indeed. 1 year to the day after the Xlorgon Fleet first appeared in Earth's orbit, a ceremony was held in the newly constructed Interstellar Cooperation Center in Geneva. Representatives from 12 species gathered to witness the formal signing of the Earth-Xlorgon Cooperation Treaty, a document that established not only bilateral relations between the two powers, but also created mechanisms for resolving disputes throughout this sector of the galaxy. High Lord Farthub, now serving as the Xlorgon Empire's first ambassador of interspecies relations, stood beside Jeffrey at a viewport overlooking Lake Geneva. Your planet is even more beautiful from the surface than it was from orbit, Farthub observed, though I admit I was somewhat distracted during my first viewing. Yes, coordinating an invasion fleet probably doesn't leave much time for sightseeing, Jeffrey replied dryly. Farthub's tentacles rippled with amusement. Indeed not. A pity, in retrospect. They watched in comfortable silence as boats moved across the lake, tiny figures enjoying the peaceful day, unaware of the historic events unfolding nearby. Do you ever wonder? Farthub asked suddenly. What would have happened if we had succeeded? If your defenses had failed and the Xlorgon Empire had conquered Earth? Jeffrey considered this. Sometimes, I suspect it would have been a Pyrrhic victory for you. How so? Earth has a long history of resisting occupation, Jeffrey explained. Even if you had overcome our defenses, maintaining control would have been challenging, and you would have missed the opportunity we have now to learn from each other as equals. Farthub nodded slowly. A wise observation. Perhaps the universe arranged our meeting precisely as it should have been. Perhaps, Jeffrey agreed. Or perhaps we simply made the best of an unexpected situation. Either way, Farthub said, turning toward the ceremony hall where dignitaries were gathering, I find I prefer this outcome to the one I originally envisioned. As do I, High Lord, Jeffrey replied with a smile. As do I. As they walked together toward the ceremony, representatives of worlds that might have been conqueror and conquered, but instead had found a different path, Jeffrey reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. From that first interrupted speech to this historic treaty, from threats of subjugation to promises of cooperation, it was a transformation few could have predicted. And yet, perhaps it was always the most likely outcome, for in the vast expanse of the universe, with its infinite diversity and endless possibilities, the greatest conquest was not of territory or resources, but of understanding, not the subjugation of others, but the discovery of common ground across the stars. The Xlorgon had come to Earth seeking conquest and found something far more valuable, a new way forward, not just for their two civilizations, but potentially for all who looked to the stars and wondered what awaited them there. It had begun with a misunderstanding and a test of determination. It would continue as one of the greatest adventures in human history, the ongoing exploration of what was possible when former enemies chose alliance over animosity, cooperation over conquest, and hope over fear. And it all started because a calm human with a clipboard interrupted an alien invasion. Sometimes, Jeffrey thought as he took his place for the treaty signing, the universe had a sense of humor after all. As the stars fade and our tale concludes, I hope you've enjoyed this cosmic journey from invasion to alliance. If this story of unexpected friendship across the stars resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with fellow sci-fi enthusiasts who might appreciate a tale where diplomacy triumphs over destruction. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more original stories that explore the vast possibilities of our universe and beyond. Hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next interstellar adventure launches. Perhaps we'll revisit Earth and the Xlorgon Empire, or discover entirely new civilizations waiting to be explored. Leave a comment below sharing your favorite moment from the story or what you think might happen next in this universe. Would you trust a former invader? What other alien species might Earth encounter? Until our next cosmic rendezvous, keep looking to the stars, and maybe keep a clipboard and coffee handy, just in case unexpected visitors arrive in your orbit.